Today we're going to talk about the characteristics of a successful port engineer. So approximately 2 years ago, the senior port engineers, Jim Todd, Ken Jacobs, Doug Briscoe, Dan Conti, myself, Jack Good from our previous sub, CACI, we got together and we identified the characteristics of a successful port engineer. There's 14 characteristics. We have a handout that identifies those characteristics, and we're going to go through that today with the goal that you will develop those characteristics as a port engineer. Now, one of the things that we learned that if you follow what we've call the Navy Port Engineer Standard Day, or the Standard Day. If you follow the Navy Port Engineer Standard Day, by default, you will accomplish the bulk of the 14 characteristics of being a successful port engineer. So I'm going to start out discussing the Port Engineer Navy Standard Day, or Standard Day. So initially, you enter your time. You enter your time today for yesterday's workload. And the reason we recommend doing that is that it's not uncommon to work hours after you've left the building or after you've left the ship. So to eliminate the need to go in and revise your timesheet, we recommend that first thing in the morning when you open up your computer at your office, or if you're teleworking in Norfolk, at your home computer, the first thing in the morning you enter your time for Monday on Tuesday morning. And this is important because this is how this gets audited. The time has to be accurate, and it allows upper management to see how much time you're spending on the ship, how much time you're behind the computer, how to adjust your workload, and have your requirements match the time available. So it's also a contractual legal requirement. So it's an important part of doing business. The second thing we do after the computer is now online, you've entered time, we check our VSB queue, our Validate Screening Broker queue. We check our shore file. On our shore file, the filters that you guys have established look for the work status of a particular work notification. The filter, your screening required queue, is set up to recognize jobs that haven't been screened, jobs that are returned, and jobs that I have an assignment status vice an approved status. So every morning after doing your timesheet, a best practice would be to open up VSB and download the jobs that have been uplined to you the previous day or previous evening. This also supports the jobs that you need to ship check during that day. So you can download those jobs, copy them, print them, carry them to the ship for your ship check that you're going to do on a daily basis at 9 o'clock. Another best practice, you're behind your computer, you're starting your morning off, you're getting your day started, so you've downloaded or reviewed VSB. You check your inbox for messages, your email inbox for messages. Now, as you get into the program, you're going to find that inbox can have 20, 30, 40, 50 messages a day sitting on your inbox when you first arrive. And this is one of the areas that can take you off path very easily, you can find yourself sitting in the email inbox and concentrating on the emails and responding to the emails and losing your time in the morning to get out to the ship. So one of the things I recommend is sort of a speed read of your inbox from. Who's it from? What's the subject? Just a quick speed read. And generally speaking, look at the emails, open the emails that are from your CO, maybe your department head, SMO. Open up the email that's from the local senior port engineer or TDO. If it's from many other sources in the Navy and the technical community, those could wait until after you get back to your office later in the day. But there may be an email from the type desk officer or the local senior port engineer, CO of the ship, that you need to be aware of because you're going to the ship and you want to be able to respond to the captain when you're down there, or you want to be, the TDO is asking you to look at a piece of equipment that was CASREP that evening, or look at a space that had a fire that evening or electrical fire. So yes, you review your inbox, but you have the concept that this review is limited because you want to get to the ship by 9 o'clock. I failed to mention that the port engineer's typical workday starts at 7. So from 7 to 8:45, 7 to 8:30, you're managing your VSB screening required queue, and you're managing the important inbox messages that you received. 8:30, around 8:30, you're leaving towards the ship. Maybe if you're teleworking, maybe you're driving from home to the ship, to the pier, or in the better circumstances, you're driving from your office within the regional maintenance center, or from your shipyard office, you're driving down to the pier with the goal to be on the ship by 9 o'clock. And it's best to establish a habit of about the same times, because you're going to find that the ship starts to expect to see you. You know, you establish a habit both for yourself to be there around 9 o'clock, and the ship starts to expect you to see you at 9 o'clock, and they start organizing their requests or questions or their ship checks to support your time scale. I do recommend the morning, because we've learned from experience that the ship following lunch starts to have home projects, training issues, force protection, dental appointments, medical appointments. So if you have established a practice of going to the ship in the afternoon, you find very quickly that there's few people aboard, and that becomes an issue because you need the ship to operate the equipment to demonstrate the problem that they've identified on the work notification. So we do recommend going to the ship around 9, or being aboard the ship around 9 o'clock. Now, when you go to the ship, the primary purpose of going to the ship is to validate the work notification. The primary directive, go look, go look, go look, go look, go look. So that's the primary purpose of going to the ship. But because you're on the ship, there are important ship's force members that you want to communicate with and take advantage of seeing them face to face, having face-to-face conversations, not just texting or not just emailing, have face-to-face conversations. So I'm going to describe a practice that I developed for the DDGs. We're engineers. We like to do things to a plan. So I actually, over the years, developed a plan and how I actually maneuvered around the ship to do my daily visits with the ship. And for those that are familiar with DDGs, the most normal way to access the ship is through the port airlock. So gangway to quarterdeck to port side to the port airlock into the O1 passageway. Immediately on the inboard side of the port airlock is ET Shop 1. ET Shop 1 is where the EMO sits. In most ships, the EMO is the SMO. So at 9 o'clock, almost every workday, I'm knocking on the ET Shop 1 and I'm having a conversation with the SMO. The SMO very quickly knew that that was my path, and he saved that 10 minutes, 15 minutes at 9 o'clock to see me first thing in the morning. Why? Because he wanted to know what I was going to be doing, and he had notes or questions from the CO, the Chang, the ops boss, the first lieutenant. Hey, ask Mike to come see me. Ask Mike to look at this problem on such and such work notification, such and such JSN. So immediately, right from the get-go, I was having a conversation with the SMO, and we kicked the working day off. Following that conversation, worked my way forward, and I walked past 2 doors forward is the ship's office. Now, in the old days, we did everything with paper, so I was making copies of my work notifications that I had edited. And I would take that edited copy and I would shove it into the mailbox in the ship's office. You certainly could do that today, but most likely today you're going to be passing emails back and forth. That's the norm of doing business. But if you want to get hard copies to the ship, anybody on the ship's office, which is 2 doors forward, same passageway, has the mailboxes in it. So you know, right on your walking path, you're able to drop hard copies for the CO, XO, department heads, work centers. It's all right there in the ship's office. You continue forward another 20 feet, make a inboard turn, and you come to CES, Combat Systems Maintenance Central, CSMC, Combat Systems Maintenance Central. That is where the CSO and the STO sit. Remember, we've discussed the System Test Officer is the LDO, Warrant Officer, maintenance professional that supports the Combat Systems Officer. So immediately, still, you haven't walked more than 50 feet, and you've seen the SMO, you've delivered mail, and now you're talking to the CSO. And you're having the discussions on the Combat Systems 2 kilos that have problems. You're getting feedback from him on issues, concerns that he has. He, in this case, is actually 2 people, CSO or STO. Talking to one is the same as talking to the other, so you don't have to track them both down. Seeing either one is sufficient. And you're looking at the 8 o'clocks. And if you remember, we spoke about the 8 o'clocks. The 8 o'clocks are the department head's report that lists all the current CAS reps, DFSs, technical standing orders, hot jobs, areas of concerns. That's either on a printed piece of paper hanging in the space, or it's on the LAN, and they would have a computer in the space that you can access that LAN. Or they could print the 8 o'clocks off the LAN and give you a copy of the 8 o'clocks. Do be careful though if the 8 o'clocks is discussing schedule, because schedule is classified. So one way or another, you'd have to delete any discussions of the schedule on a hard copy basis. Anything you're carrying on and off the ship should be unclassified in nature. So you've seen so now timesheet, VSB, screening queue, important emails, starting your ship check or conversation with the SMO, delivering of mail, conversation with CSO, STO, continue over another 5 feet, down the starboard ladder, back 60 feet, you're at the log room. Now you're speaking with the Chang and MPA, and you're basically accomplishing the same requirement that you did with the CSO. You're providing feedback on issues that Chang has. You have work notifications that require the equipment to be operated, so you're interfacing with the Chang/MPA to ask them to operate the equipment or give you a time frame when that piece of equipment could be operated, or a time frame that space could be open. Remember, some spaces require gas-free certificate. Uptakes, for example, can require gas-free certificates. So you may need to get into that space, but you can't get in there today. You got to get him to have his gas-free engineer, who's usually the DCA, gas-free the space, have it open, have it ventilated, and tomorrow you get into space to do the ship check. But that all takes the coordination with the Chang and MPA. Now at this point, you've accomplished sort of a primary best practice of establishing communications with 2 of the department heads and the SMO that are very important for you as an HM&E port engineer to do business. So now you're actually doing the physical ship checks. You have a petty officer assigned to go down and light off the HPAC, and you're going down into MER1 to watch the number 1 HPAC operate. So you're doing the ship check, the go look, for the purpose of validating the 2 kilo, the work notification, and editing block 35. That will take you through, and generally that will take you through the rest of the morning. So it's most normal now, once you've finished your ship checks, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 work notifications, once you've completed those ship checks, made notes that are going to allow you to go back to the office and edit block 35, right, it's 11:30, it's lunchtime, and you're getting ready to leave the ship to go back to the office. Critically important, before you leave the ship, and it's approaching lunchtime, it's very simple to find the CO in his cabin and have a conversation with the CO on any critical issues that he's concerned about. And he may ask you what's the results of your ship checks. You may have a question from the type desk officer about a CASREP that he has. You can exchange information for the purpose of supporting the type desk. So you have the conversation with the CO. That may mean a cup of coffee, talking about the kids. The baseball game may mean very technical discussion, or it may mean he's a busy guy and he just gives you a high sign and he knows you've been aboard, he knows you're aboard doing your job, and he has confidence that you're out there communicating with his department heads. So have that, and we call it a flyby because sometimes it's just literally that, eye contact with the CO, that he has the knowledge, the awareness that you've been aboard doing your job. Now, before you leave the ship, now you're really on the path to head back to the office. Before you leave the ship, at least weekly, you should make an effort to see the 3MC, because the 3MC may have issues, may have software issues, may have hardware issues, and may not be pushing jobs to you for you to totally support the communications between the ship and the shore side on what work is required. And you won't know that unless you're having a conversation with the 3MC. So at least once a week, you could set up a typical day, Wednesdays, every Wednesday at 11:30 or every Wednesday at 11:45 in the chief mess, hook up with the 3MC and make sure the 3MC and you are processing the work effectively. So now it's lunch, you left the ship. I recommend that you do take a lunch break. I'm not a big fan of eating lunch at your desk because there's a lot of stressful stuff going on during the day, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, ship checks, churn, a lot of changes. I think it's a good idea to get a little break, either go out, get something to eat, go out for a run, a jog, you know, take an hour, take 45 minutes, take a little time off at lunch, clear the head, recharge the batteries, get back in engagement at, let's say, 1300. So 1300, you're now back in your office. For those that have an office at the RMC, you're back in the office, and you should be contacting, communicating with the type desk officer, whether that's an email, whether that's a phone call, whether it's a text, whether it's an exchange of a spreadsheet. You and the type desk officer, type desk assistant should establish a communication process that works for that type desk and your maintenance team. But daily, there should be an exchange of information. And that, in my case, I scheduled that for the time frame right after lunch. Once you've completed the conversation with the type desk officer, now you go back into your VSB software and you start to edit, revise, screen the work notifications that you ship checked that day. You want a personal goal to keep the number of work notifications in your inbox into the 10, 12, 20 range, so that it's one screenshot in the VSB screen, so that if there's a CASREP that's been loaded, or if there's a 2 kilo that's been loaded that you're waiting on, you see it, because you could look at one simple screenshot and see the outstanding jobs that require screening. If you develop the habit of batching by continuous screening, and you do this once a week or twice a month or something, your inbox is going to be hundreds of work notifications, and you won't easily identify changes in your work notifications as work is uplined from the ship. It'll be lost in the clutter of 100 JSNs or 200 JSNs. So Keep that number 10, 12, 15, 20. Keep moving it, because as we're describing here, this is a best practice that you're accomplishing on a daily fashion. Daily meaning work day. We're not expecting this on Saturday and Sunday. So you've now updated updated or screened your work notifications. Hopefully you've cleaned your inbox out, or close to clean your inbox out. It's never as easy to do as it is to say, because some of these jobs take a little take conversations with subject matter experts at Code 200, or calling the ISEA, the in-service engineering agent. So some jobs take research. So, a job may take a week, 2 weeks, a month to really come up with an effective plan. But most jobs, after you do your ship check, you'll have sufficient information to screen right then and there. So keep that inbox a limited number of jobs. So you've to repeat, timesheet, VSB, new VSB jobs, important emails, ship check, communications with the maintenance team, communications with the CO, eye-to-eye contact with the CO, feedback to the type desk officer. In the perfect world, you're sitting next to your project manager, so you're exchanging with your project manager back when you return to the office. You're exchanging with him what you learned while you were on the ship. He's communicating to you what new issues that he may have, or that you're approaching a milestone towards the buildup of your work package. So in the best worlds, you're sitting with him. If you're teleworking and you're not sitting with him, the requirement to talk to the type desk officer daily should also equal the requirement to talk to your project manager daily. Hopefully that's an unusual circumstance, not to be co-located with your PM. Does occur, but in the best world, you two are sharing a cubicle and you're communicating all the time. Now you've communicated with the type desk officer, you've gone into VSB for the second time, where you're actually screening the job, and you finished your VSB heavy lift, the go look, and now you're answering your emails. Remember, you had 20, 30, 40, 50 emails, maybe 10 or 12 of them you answered right away, but there's 30 still in your inbox, plus you received more while you were on the ship. So now you have, from maybe 2 o'clock to 3:30, you have an hour and a half to do sort of the administrative stuff and answering your email. Once your email's answered, there is some long-term projects that you can, or products that you can take on while you're sitting at your desk before you call it a day. You can be working on business case analysis, where you've identified a shortfall in funds to support the required work. You could be working on your MMBP, your Maintenance Monetization Business Plan, that supports next year's budget. This is a evolution that starts in March every year and takes multiple weeks before it finally is hardened in concrete as your budget for next year around the June, July timeframe. So it starts in March, a lot of exchange of emails, gets firmed up in June, July. This is also an opportunity where you could go in to our training program and work on your core knowledge topics and do the reviews in the GIFM and the online reviews in the Port Engineer homepage, the PowerPoints in the Port Engineer homepage that allows you to take the very short test, the open book test on that knowledge area, complete the test, submit it to Anita Abedini. She updates your report card, and of course the local senior port engineer and your supervisors are reviewing your report card with the goal that in a 2-year cycle, close to the fleet response plan gets adjusted periodically. Now it's 3 years, but it had been 2 years. But the goal is in 2 years is to complete all your core knowledge areas and all your core evolutions and be certified as a level 3 port engineer. When you finish your indoctrination training, which we're doing now, you go from a level 1 port engineer. When you're hired, you're a level 1 port engineer. When you finish your indoctrination training, you are certified as a level 2 port engineer, and then you have a 2-year time frame to self-study and at your pace to reach the goal of level 3. To make that go effectively, you should do at least one knowledge area every week. If you do at least that, you will hit the goal of finishing on time. I think there's a total of 80-some knowledge areas. So obviously over 2 years you'll reach the goal. But there's some weeks that are slower than others, so you need to ensure that you at least do one a week. And finally, at the end of the day, you make a to-do list for what you want to accomplish tomorrow. And that's so 3:30, you're calling it a day. So that's the Navy Standard Day. And we have learned that if you only do that, which is a lot, but if you understand the concept behind the Navy Standard Day and you follow that premise that I'm going at a minimum follow this Navy Standard Day, you will be a successful port engineer. And now we'll go through, there's 14 characteristics that we've identified as being a successful port engineer. We'll go through those 14 characteristics and I'll tie it back to that Navy Standard Day. So the first characteristics is ensuring that your shore file CSMP is accurate and valid and screened. So obviously, if you're looking at your VSB final screening queue daily, you're reviewing the work notifications, you're ship checking the work notifications, so you're validating that work notification. If your CSMP, current ship maintenance plan, which is the accumulations of all work notifications, if each individual work notification is accurate, you have an accurate CSMP. So the objective of going to the ship daily and validating those work notifications results in an accurate work notification. An accurate work notification, or valid, they like to use the term, a valid work notification results in a valid, accurate CSMP. So that's easily ties together then. We've learned that a successful port engineer spends a significant part of his day on board the ship. Again, going to the ship daily, doing the work, during the validations, communicating with your maintenance team, communicating with the department heads. That takes a significant portion of your day on board the ship. So go to the ship. A successful port engineer is the go-to person for all commands for any maintenance issues. So very quickly, the shoreside community, the type desk, the RMC, the in-service engineering agencies, SurfMap, NAVC, they will contact you, the port engineer, as their first point of contact on maintenance issues. The ship, because they see you every day, because you're observing their equipment in operation, you're editing the 2 kilo, you're screening the 2 kilo, you're building the work package. They see you every day. You're their first point of contact for maintenance issues. So very quickly, you become the go-to guy on their maintenance issues. Again, because you're the one individual within the Navy that is actually out on the deck plates observing the problem. Most of the other players in the Navy maintenance community are doing maintenance business on the computer. You're doing maintenance business on the computer and on the ship. And really, you're the only one doing both. You and the combat systems port engineer. You want to meet established milestones. So by the GIFM, the project manager is responsible to ensure the port engineer, and the maintenance team, is tracking to the milestones. So in the perfect world, you're in the same room with the project, same office as the project manager, and he's providing an alert as you're approaching the milestones. You can also set up your VSB has a functionality to track milestones to the particular CNO or CMAV availability. So you can have VSB give you alerts on approaching lock dates and milestones. This continuous visits to the ship, continuous conversations with the department heads, the CO, feedback to the type desk officer, personal pride, very quickly results in establishing an ownership relationship with that ship. It's very quickly that the ship recognizes that you're representing the type commander, who is the owner of the ship, and that you take personal ownership of that ship, ensuring that it's going to sail on time, ensuring that it's safe to sail, ensuring that all mission areas are full. So ownership, again, comes with daily visits and conversations with type desk officer and ship's crew. With the ownership and with the communications we establish a trust. So the better successful port engineers have established a trust relationship with the ship's commanding officer and crew. All a function of communication, all a function of advocating for the ship, passing feedback between the type commander and the ship. Maintains frequent contact with the assigned ship commanding officer. You can't be any more frequent than seeing the CO every day. So see that CO every day. That establishes trust between you and the CO. An effective communicator. Don't fall into the trap of recognizing that when you have a communication with the chief engineer or communication with the CO, there may be a little stress or strain in the communication because he wants something done now, or he wants all done when he needs 5 done. Yes, you're going to have that stress. There is going to be in a sense, a slight adversary conversation occasionally, but that is how you become a effective communicator, and the ship is aware of the issues and the whys behind the statement, we can't do all, because the availability is 8 weeks. We can't do 100 countermeasure washdown hangars in 8 weeks. We can only do 40 or 50 or whatever the number is. So be an effective communicator. Don't just send the email and say, no, we can't do 100. Say no, but explain why no. And also explain the options. Maybe 100 need to be done, and they need to be done now because the countermeasure washdown piping is rattling and sagging, and you're afraid it's going to fall off the superstructure and be laying on the weather deck. Well, what's the options? You need to try to get a schedule change. You need to go back to the type desk officer, ask for more schedule, or with the BCA, ask for more schedule. So be an effective communicator. Be the most knowledgeable person about the material condition of the ship. Again, the daily visits, the daily communications, the daily review of VSB very quickly. I mean, you'll be shocked how quickly you will be the most knowledgeable person on the waterfront on that ship. Literally in months, you'll be the most knowledgeable person. That crew is turning over all the time. The type desk officers are turning over all the time. The squadron's turning over all the time. So that very little continuity. You become the continuity for the ship, the machinery history. Coach the ship on the Navy maintenance practices. Don't just put them on report, or don't just say that, you know, you guys are all screwed up, or lose your temper, or have an emotional argument. If it's obvious that they're making the same error over and over again, they need some coaching. You pull part of the GIFM out. Make a copy of one of our PowerPoints from our training, this introduction training. Put it up on the bulkhead during your monthly PB4M meeting. So coach them up. Help them learn the process. Ensure the right work is in the work package. So when you're validating work on board the ship, often you'll get statements that the fan room in such and such space is corroded, or needs to be repainted, needs industrial support because you have interferences. There will be fan rooms that require depot shipyard work. But you can evaluate that because why? You ship checked, you saw it. You saw that corrosion is significant. It's loss of paint. It's holes in the bulkhead. But on the other hand, you'll see the same 2 kilo written for a space that the paint is old. It's not missing. There's no rust, there's no corrosion. It's just tired looking. That's not a depot level job. That's a ship's force job to paint that space. So the wording on the 2 kilo that you received from the crew in both cases may be very, very similar. And if you make the assumption that the 2 kilo is an accurate document coming off the ship, you'll screen both of these jobs to the depot for depot level work when in fact only one of them required. And the one that did require repairs, you should edit that 2 kilo and tell the planner, the project manager, in the block 35 of the 2 kilo, there is 40% of the paint missing. There is 10% of the bulkheads highly corroded. There is multiple pinholes in the bulkhead from corrosion. Define the scope of the work accurately so the planners can write an accurate work spec and provide an accurate estimate if it's depending on the contract, either from the project manager slash shipbuilding specialist, an accurate IGE, independent government estimate. Additionally, provides a complete and factual, accurate business case analysis and risk assessment for unfunded work. So remember, you and the type desk officer developed the budget for that ship, the controls for that ship. It's not uncommon that you developed a budget for $14 million worth of work. The type commander had constraints and they had $10 million to provide you. So you identified the $14 million worth of work. You have $10 million. You can't get there from here. So as part of the budget process, the maintenance modernization business plan process, you identified the risk associated with having less than $14 million. These are the jobs that are going to be deferred. These are the jobs that are going to be scheduled for the next availability. This is the impact that you're going to have by not doing those jobs. That is the definition of a BCA. Beat that drum. You're going to have quarterly meetings in support of building your work package. You're going to provide minutes to the type desk officer at the end, not necessarily minutes, but you're going to provide an outbrief to the type desk officer at the end of these meetings. As part of that outbrief, reattach that BCA that you developed that identified the shortfall. Attach it, edit it, update it, but repeat it and tell them, I hear you. And here's how we're progressing, and we've got this work package and we're progressing as in accordance with the milestones. However, we still have the same issue that we had 6 months ago or 4 months ago or a year ago. We still have $14 million worth of work and my budget is still $10 million. There's still this large number of jobs here that are going to be deferred. Keep that drumbeat every quarter, and it's not uncommon that the type commander takes that aboard and he finds money and he pumps up your package. Now also be aware that as the package gets expensive, the schedule gets longer. And it's critical in 2017, 2018, the Navy's focused very heavily on meeting schedule. So sometimes, yes, you could get the money, but if you get that money, you need more schedule, and you can't get the schedule. So, you got to balance the work, the money, and the schedule. They all go hand in hand. They're all linked together at the hip. And again, you can address that in your BCA. You could tell them, I need 14, but also, if you do give me 14, instead of 12 weeks availability, I'm going to need a 16-week availability. So spell that out in the executive summary of the BCA that, yes, if you do give me the money, be aware that I'm going to need more time too, because scale work up goes in cost and goes in schedule. Don't pass problems, facilitate solutions. So when there's a problem, that problem may not be strictly in your swim lane. There may be a problem with port services, how the power is being provided to the pier. Maybe the ship is experiencing brownouts, and when they get a brownout, they have so many cards that are damaged in the combat suite. Results in CAS reps, results in long lead time material, reduced readiness of the ship. So if that's the situation that you have, don't just shrug your shoulders and say, hey, I can't do anything about brownouts. I'm not responsible for the city power. The answer should be, no. You know what? Let's document this. Let's document how many brownouts you have. How often do they occur? What's the cost ramification of the brownouts? Let's get a white paper between the combat systems officer or between the chief engineer. We'll write a white paper. We'll get it up to the type desk officer. The type desk officer gets it to the base commander. Maybe we need to get an auxiliary generator on the end of the pier, so when they see fluctuating frequencies or high demand, they can jump up an auxiliary generator. So there usually are solutions to the problem, and it may not be your direct responsibility, but you should be the guy that's thinking outside of the box and is willing to take that problem on. Generate a white paper, get it to the right people. With the right support, the type desk officer, very senior admiral, he could get other admirals engaged and come up with solutions. So don't facilitate the solution. Don't just pass the problem on. And finally, like the CO of the ship, you should be available 24/7. Now, what do I mean by 24/7? I mean that you should pass your telephone number to the ship, pass your email to the ship, pass your email telephone number to the maintenance team, to the type commander staff. When you get a phone call, answer it. If it's inopportune time, let it go on to your voicemail and get back to them when the wedding's over, whatever. But get back to follow up on it, because it can be something very serious. It could be a fire, it could be a grounding, it could be someone being hurt. So if it's a call after hours, it's usually important. It's worth getting back. If you listen to the message and you hear that it's really not that critical, you can make a 30-second phone call down to the duty officer and say, look, I got your message. I'll get on it first thing in the morning. No one's expecting you each time you get a phone call to go driving down to the ship every evening. No, you learn which issues require you to jump in the car and drive down to the base, and with what issues are, hey Chang, I got you. You burned up a saltwater pump. I'll see it in the morning. We'll come up with a plan on what we could do. That wouldn't warrant, they have 4 saltwater service pumps, so they need 2. So burning one up, yeah, it's important, but it doesn't require you to jump in the car at 11 o'clock at night and drive down to the ship. So you will learn very quickly what requires immediate attention and what you can address the next morning. But do answer the mail, because they're worried and they want to make sure that you're engaged in supporting them. Okay, that's a successful port engineer.